The brain cannot distinguish between something that's vividly imagined and something that's real.
You know, like sometimes you lay down in bed and you visualize things. I'd imagine playing for the Lakers, and I would imagine what the uniforms look like. I would imagine where we'd be playing and the smell of the arena and all sorts of stuff. And I would see myself, getting hot, score 10 straight points.
You do that over and over, and by the time you stand on the blocks, you've swum this race 300 times. Instead of the first time being the Olympics, this is like number 350. And he has this database of things that he can do subconsciously if something happens in the race that he needed to change. So it's very powerful.
So when you download that into your system and you go out in the court and you're just executing things that you've done thousands of times before, and you have that dream, then that becomes possible.
Welcome to the Exponential Athlete Podcast. This is part 2 of my series on visualization for elite athletes. Again, we are diving into the nuts and bolts of visualization. This should be really actionable and understandable to anyone who's pursuing sports at a high level or anything at a high level to begin with. To recap episode 1, we touched first on the value that visualization creates, a little bit about how it works with functional equivalency. Then we touched on the different types of visualization. So we have cognitive versus motivational. Cognitive is you using visualization to improve your technical ability or your strategic ability. And then motivational is focused on improving your psychological state or maximizing your psychological state. We also brought up a couple specific examples of athletes using visualization themselves. In my Michael Phelps series, I go in depth into how Michael Phelps used visualization, and I highly recommend checking that out as well if you haven't. In this episode, we're going to touch on how you can improve your visualization ability. So your ability to hold sharp pictures that actually move in your mind. We're also going to touch on a few different models that you can use to create the best visualizations for you to be able to use to improve your performance or improve your mood. We're going to touch on what's known as PETTLEP. Again, these are acronyms. They're going to be really simple to understand when I go through them, and they're very powerful. We're also going to talk about action, observation, and motor imagery. Those are combined. We'll lead into functional imagery training, as well as the AIM and the LAP model. Again, these sound confusing. They are acronyms, but once we get into the conversation and the practice around them, they're going to be really intuitive, and they're things that you can just pick up and implement right away. We'll also touch on some of the common barriers that people face when they're visualizing. I know I have personally faced quite a few of these, so it will be a very good thing for us to work through those and have some answers to some of the common areas that are challenging for most people. And then finally, we'll talk about how we make visualization a habit. Might have a little bonus section at the end where we talk about how technology can improve and enhance visualization. That'll be a game time decision as I'm going through this. Without further ado, let's jump into the ways that you can improve your visualization ability. As I mentioned in the last episode, visualization ability is something that can be improved. But there's this wide range of people that people have around how well they can visualize. So I gave a very simple exercise at the end of the last video. I'll also include some real assessments in the show notes and the links of this episode to test that you can do to evaluate your visualization ability in general. When we're trying to improve our visualization, there's generally a 3-step process that we can take. So just practicing visualization in general, any way that you do it improves your visualization ability. But I like this little 3-step process that allows us to consistently improve our ability to visualize. So first, I recommend doing a static visualization. So the idea would be that we hold something up. What do I have nearby? I have this ab wheel. I would look at it. I would really study it. And then I would close my eyes and I would try to recreate it. And then I open them up when it gets fuzzy. I relook at it. I close my eyes. And then I continue to try to visualize it. And I try to hold the image in my mind longer. I also try to experiment with it. So if it's oriented in this way, what would it be like if I visualized it and flipped it over in my mind? If I looked at it from different angles? If I looked at it from my perspective versus a third-party perspective of me looking at this object? Well, you can do that. I recommend consistent practice around that. I usually do that in the morning or in the evening. A good practice that I had was before I was going to bed, I would look at the clock on my wall and close my eyes and try to visualize that. That was a very good exercise for me to think about the shape of the clock, the tick marks, everything about it in great detail. The next step beyond that, once you're really comfortable with static visualization, is to visualize a dynamic moving object. So a very common one is a bouncing ball. So you're visualizing the ball bouncing, the cadence and the rhythm that the ball bounces with real physics. Another one that I would do was that same clock visualization. So I'd look at the clock and I'd visualize the second hand going around in real time. So being able to visualize in real time, to slow it down or to speed it up, is also a very powerful skill. And then the next level that you want to start doing is sport-specific visualization. So I was a big golfer. I still train jiu-jitsu. When you want to practice, you can visualize the movement pattern that you're working on. So in golf, it's usually a full golf swing, or maybe it's easier to start with a putt or a chip, and you visualize the full movement pattern. And you can visualize it again from first person. You can practice visualizing it, feeling what the swing is like. I personally, when I've trained golf or when I've trained in jiu-jitsu, I do a lot better when I visualize feeling my body in space, feeling what the weight of someone else might feel like when I'm doing a certain move, feeling like the tension or the leverage that someone would experience when I'm trying to do a sweep or a movement pattern. And then the last part related to this is practicing incorporating different senses into this. So even in the static visualization, if you're visualizing it, maybe you're visualizing an apple on a desk and you visualize yourself touching the apple. What does the skin of the apple feel like when you take a bite out of an apple, which might be a dynamic visualization? What does it taste like? What is the texture on your teeth or on your tongue? All of these help to improve the quality of the visualization and to recruit more motor neurons into that pattern that you're studying. I personally think that daily practice for visualization is important. That is one of the best ways to learn and develop the skill effectively. Michael Phelps would visualize almost every night before he went to bed. He had this incredible power to see the entire race in his mind. So a metaphor can also help. So Bob Bowman, Michael Phelps' coach, would tell Michael to put in the tape, and then Michael would watch his performance. He would see it from a bird's eye view, but he would also see a lot of it through his own eyes. Now, how do we evaluate if our visualizations are improving, or what should we be looking at to improve in our visualizations? So the first thing is the duration of the visualization. So how long can you clearly hold an image in your mind? The second thing is stability. So do the images remain steady in your mind? Do they flicker in and out? They sort of get fuzzy, or do you just get distracted? One of my biggest challenges is I start to see it and then I get distracted. I can't fully picture it. The best thing for me in that space is to open my eyes and to see the object again. As we're talking about sports-specific movements as well, I have found the best success visualizing immediately after I hit a shot on the golf course. So I would feel the motion and then I close my eyes and visualize the motion. And that was the best way for me to ingrain exactly what it felt like or what it looked like to do that pattern. The next thing related to visualization is the complexity. So can you visualize increasingly complex movements, scenarios? So first you might want to be visualizing just an apple on a desk, then maybe an apple with a mouse on the desk. And then you want to visualize the apple and the mouse moving all over the desk. Then you want to incorporate the smell of the apple and what it sounds like to have the mouse drag across the desk or something along those lines. The more complex you can manage the visualization and the more senses that you can incorporate, the higher quality an experience and outcome you're going to have. And the next thing you want to look at is control. So how easily can you manipulate the images at will? So can you change perspective easily? Can you zoom in? Can you zoom out? Can you speed up or slow down the movements or the patterns that you're seeing? After that, we want to evaluate emotional response. So does your visualization call something in your body? So let's say you're visualizing winning a championship, hitting the game-winning putt, whatever it might be. Do you get those feelings of accomplishment? Do you get those feelings of elation? Do you feel the pride in the work that you've done and all the practice that you've had? It is important to elicit an emotional response, especially in motivational imagery. After that, we want to evaluate multisensory richness. I talked a bit about this before, but again, in these visualizations, you want to consistently include multiple senses. For me, the main ones are touch and vision. So being able to feel my hands on the golf club, feel my body moving in space, but also seeing the flight of a golf ball or the target that I want to hit it at. And then finally, how automatically does this come to you? Is it natural to just create images in your mind? Visualization isn't just about projecting into the future, it's also recalling the past. So your ability to vividly recreate a scenario that happened could be a way to very elegantly practice visualization as well. You can also use the past as a frame of reference. So your ability to recall and remember can help improve your visualization ability overall as well. Again, I highly recommend putting this into practice. It's going to be difficult at first. You're not going to see, at least for me, it was very challenging. But the more I practiced, the more I would watch something and then do it, the better results that I got. From here, let's dive straight into the first model, which is the PETTLEP model, which is one of the most effective ways for making visualization more effective. This is exactly a roadmap for how to visualize and get good results from it. So as I alluded to, PETTLEP is or PETTLEP. I don't know exactly the correct terminology. I have just read it a bunch of times. It's an acronym that stands for all of the things that you need to focus on to create a compelling visualization for yourself. So the first is physical. So in this model, they recommend getting an artifact or something that reminds you of your sport to create a similar physical environment. So for example, you might be able to put on your basketball jersey and you visualize wearing that basketball jersey. That brings you closer to the physical element. Another example would be Steve Nash, where he's shooting these phantom free throws, where he's actually feeling the movement and seeing and feeling the ball come out of his hand. The next thing is the environment. So the closer you are to the real environment where you're playing or competing, the more vivid the visualization is going to be. So let's say you're taking a math test, you studying in the room and visualizing in the room is going to improve your results with your visualization. Same thing as if you're running a track meet and going and doing the visualization on the track is going to improve the performance. Particularly Lindsey Vonn and a lot of other skiers, they do their visualizations before they go down the mountain on the racetrack, where they're seeing all of the turns and they can open their eyes and see the track as well. The next thing is the task. So you're going to break down the visualization into its core elements. After that, the next T stands for timing. So in this model, they found that you get the best results from visualization when your visualization is in real time. So that means that you're seeing the pitch as it comes in real time. Your golf swing and your movement pattern is the same as it is in real time. There are sometimes reasons to slow things down or speed them up. But if your focus is purely performance, then real time is going to give you the best bet. The L stands for learning. So visualization should evolve with your skill set. You should be visualizing things that are challenging for you now, but are physically doable for you. So for example, if I was a gymnast with my current body, me visualizing a double backflip or something crazy probably wouldn't pay me dividends or wouldn't suit me. But if I continually evolved my skills and physically I could do that movement, as I've gotten better, then I should be able to start visualizing that as well. The E in this model stands for emotion. Incorporating emotional intensity, whether it's anger, frustration, fear, excitement, any of these types of things, helps you to get the most out of this experience. And then the last thing they focus on, the last P, is perspective. So should you be using the first person or the third person example that we talked about at length in part 1? There is plenty of scientific evidence around PETTLEP's success and efficacy. I have a lot of that in the book that I wrote. I didn't think it would be useful to go into all of that in depth here, but if you're looking for all the science and the backup around that, that is all included there. Wanted to take a quick second to talk about creatine. So creatine is one of the safest and best research supplements out there. It is shown to significantly improve muscle strength, endurance, as well as muscle mass. And Pretty much every elite athlete that I know that does not have a sensitivity to it is taking it. I personally take creatine gummies. I purchased this with my own money. They're delicious. They're easy to take every day. And to me, they're a far superior alternative to choking down the grainy and chalky creatine powder. In the description and in the show notes, there's a link to my affiliate code, which gets you 20% off. I do get a small kickback from that, but I'm only promoting this because I truly believe in the product and I think it is very good and effective. If you're interested in that, the code is AthleteX and you can get your 20% off there. I wanted to take a quick second to talk about sleep quality and its importance for athletes. So if you listen to this podcast, you know that a good night's sleep is very important for your athletic performance. And recently, there's been a lot of good research around the correlation between air quality and good sleep quality. I purchased this Jasper air purifier with my own money about a month ago, and I've seen really good data feedback on my sleep quality and my time asleep going up. I believe that the only variable associated with that is this Jasper air purifier. So much of what we talk about related to sleep and related to performance is behavioral, but there's also things that you can literally buy to improve the quality of your sleep or the quality of your performance. I highly recommend this air purifier. I have a code AthleteX that gets you 20% off of it, which is quite a lot of money. If you're interested in that, I have a link in the description and in the show notes. Again, this is something that has really helped my overall ability to produce, and I'm pretty excited about that. Happy to share. Now back to the episode. Let's go through a little exercise and try to visualize a performance setting that you want to perform well at using this model. So for me, it's going to be archery. So I'm trying to learn and improve archery. I think that's a fun way for me to exercise my mind, and it's a skill-based activity that isn't directly tied to my physical ability. So why don't you take a seat and close your eyes? If you have something around that reminds you of your sport or you wear or hold when you're playing, bring that to you. So, and just hold it in your hands. So if you're a softball player, you can grab your glove or maybe wear your batting gloves or grab a bat. Whatever is most relevant to the pattern that you're trying to work on. After you grab that item, now think about a skill that you want to improve. Maybe if you're a golfer, it's hitting a flop shot. Maybe for me, if it's archery, it's working on my release of the arrow. Maybe if you're a softball player, it's hitting a riser. Put yourself and visualize yourself in the domain where this occurs. So again, if you're a golfer, you're in the fringe near the green. If you're a basketball player, maybe you're at the free throw line. Make it as vivid as possible. Hear the audience, hear the fans, hear the ball bouncing or the wind blowing or whatever makes your situation unique. Now really focus on the task you're trying to execute. What steps go into making that task successful or that movement pattern successful? Maybe it's a kick off the wall as a swimmer. Maybe it's bowling as a cricketer. Just one movement pattern that is really integral to your sport that you want to improve. Now visualize doing it perfectly to the best of your ability in real time. What does it look like through your eyes? What does it feel like in your body? What is the sound that it makes? Maybe the ball makes a specific sound coming out of your hand as a pitcher. Does this match your skill level? Is this something you physically are able to do right now? When you execute this perfectly, what emotion do you feel? Do you feel pride that you've hit a good shot or you hit a winner? Do you feel excitement that you won the point or you executed exactly how you wanted to? Do you feel confident in your ability to execute this again? And then finally, what perspective did you take? Were you seeing this through your eyes or were you seeing this through a third person perspective? If you were seeing it through a third person perspective, try doing the same thing through your own eyes. If you were seeing it through your own eyes, maybe try doing it again from the third person perspective. Just play around with this, experiment with it. Being able to have this framework, at least for me, really solidified my ability to visualize. Before, it was this very amorphous thing. It was very confusing to me. And this framework was one of the first ones that really tied everything together. If you'd like, you can pause and do more of this type of visualization. I generally try to do a visualization like this before I go and practice or before I go compete for any of the sports that I play. Now let's move on to action observation motor imagery. So PETTLEP gave us a really good idea of what we get to visualize and hit on pretty much every one of the main ones that we want to look at. The main steps to that process. In action observation motor imagery, instead of thinking through all the process, we observe and then we visualize it through our own eyes. So there's decent science around just observing actions can improve your performance. So if I just sit and watch Tiger Woods golf swing on repeat, I'll actually internalize some of that. It doesn't mean that I will hit it like Tiger Woods, but I'll get a very minimal effect of seeing it. And there's a little bit of science debate around this, but at least in monkeys, there's this mirror neuron system. And that means that when we see something, the infrastructure in our brain also fires in similar patterns. There have not been scientifically found mirror neurons in humans, but most scientists believe that there's a similar system in our brain where if we see an action, our neurons also fire in similar patterns. Instead of just observing, we can actually observe and also use imagery to get an even greater effect. So there's a couple different ways to do this. So first, you can just watch a video of someone, for example, hitting a golf ball, and then you visualize yourself doing the same thing. Another alternative is visualizing someone hitting a golf ball or just watching a video of someone hitting a golf ball and you feeling that sensation in your body as well as if it was you. So a live demonstration was the first one. And in my interview with Bob Bowman, he talked about how he would have the kids line up and watch the Olympic swimmers. And then Bob would just go, hey, do that. And the kids executed at a really high level.
I remember having little kids, like 8-year-olds, sit on the side of the pool. I'd be like, do not say anything. Watch this Olympic swimmer swim butterfly. And she would go 3 or 4 lengths of the pool and they would just watch. I was like, don't talk, don't do anything. It's hard to do, but they could do it. And they would do it. And I'd be like, get in the water and swim just like that. And every one of them could. It would be crazy. Like just seeing it, right? Just kind of, and not talking, not disrupting anything, just kind of visualizing it live. So there's a lot of stuff that we're just scratching the surface on with that.
They were able to just see it and do it without any of this instruction. That's very similar to how this action observation motor imagery works. You can also alternate observing and then doing imagery back and forth. And that can have a really good result as well. I think that action observation motor imagery is one of the easiest first ways to get into a good visualization or guided imagery practice. Essentially, you find a model of whatever you'd like to do. You watch it and then you try to live it. You watch it and then you try to live it. You watch it and then you experience it as you're watching it. You can incorporate many of the same elements from the PETTLEP. So you can wear your jersey, you can put yourself in the same environment, you can watch a movement pattern that is similar to what you can do from your skill level, you can apply the emotion, you can apply the perspective, you would just be doing it, watching it, and then visualizing in that way. To me, this is one of my favorite patterns, something I do very consistently. I have this whole catalog of videos that I've watched for golf or for jiu-jitsu, and I watch them over and over again and internalize them and feel like I'm having those sensations in my body while doing it. Something related to this, a lot of sports psychologists or athletes will put together highlight reels of themselves. This is an awesome exercise to do. You can remember yourself and build some confidence from a past success that you've had, but you can also watch your form and recreate it when you're at your best or when you were performing a movement. And so there's an additional connection that you have to that because you physically have done it already. Yeah, I think action observation motor imagery is, again, one of the most powerful tools. The next tools I'm going to talk about functional imagery training and applied imagery motivation are also really compelling, and they have just a little bit of a different use case. So functional imagery training is one of the newer visualization models that is used. So there's also a little bit of a different process for it. It's a little bit more involved, and I want to be very clear about that. So it might make more sense to do this with a professional, but there's some elements that you can absolutely do on your own. So the first part, which is the most challenging part, is if you work with a professional doing motivational interviewing. So a motivational interview elicits your internal values and your desires, and it connects what you want with a core belief or a core value system that you have. So all of the visualizations you're doing is from this deep intrinsic desire that you have. And connecting this visualization to your intrinsic desire or your purpose can have a profound effect on your motivation as well as the efficacy of your results. I'll also say there was some pretty interesting research I found that showed that just visualizing increases your intrinsic motivation to do a skill. So they studied golfers who visualized and were practicing putting, and ones that were just practicing putting. And the group that visualized practicing putting actually were more inclined to practice as well. The act of visualizing increased that motivation to do things for the sake of doing them and the curiosity around them. Another component, which will be very consistent on all these approaches, is a multisensory engagement. They found that you get a lot stronger impact by engaging multiple senses. There's also some element of cue-based practice. So when an event happens, that cues you to do a visualization exercise. So an example would be that when you hit a pain point when you're running. So when you hit a wall during a marathon, that cues you to do a visualization that reaffirms some belief. This is a primarily motivation-focused technique. Another example would be if just when you brush your teeth, that's a cue to do a visualization, a very short visualization for yourself. And then this personal meaning integration, that is a big part of this visualization process. So you're not just visualizing what you're doing, you're also visualizing why it's important to you. And so in functional image training, they have a model called AIM. I actually don't know what AIM stands for, to be perfectly honest. But the idea is that you have these 3 stages of a visualization you do. So you visualize the big picture, which is called macro imagery. So you're connecting what you're doing now with the long-term goals you have. So maybe I'm a golfer, and my dream is to one day make the PGA Tour. So I'm visualizing myself as that professional golfer who just made his first cut in a PGA Tour event, or maybe hit the winning putt at a major championship, my long-term goal. Now we contrast that, which is called meso imagery, with the current self. So where I am now, and you compare that to where you would like to be. So you're directly connecting the current you and the future self you'd like to be. Part of that process is realizing that you're the same person. You have all the tools psychologically, whatever it might be, and your way of being around whoever you are in that future self can start in this present. And then after that, you have this micro imagery, which is an immediate action step that you take towards your goal. So if we're using that example of this, cue-based AIM imagery for someone running a marathon, what would happen is they're running, they start to hit a wall. This cues them to think about running the Boston Marathon and finishing in their best time later in the year. They contrast that to where they are now, and they say, hey, unless I get through this pain right now that I'm feeling, I'm not going to be able to see and achieve that goal. And then it starts with this process-oriented visualization action step, is them maybe taking a sip of water and visualizing themselves running one step at a time, and bringing that very closely to the present. As part of this, you also have what's known as this LAP framework, which is essentially what cues this other AIM framework. So LAP, you locate the cue like we had talked about, and then we activate the imagery. So we activate that imagery, which is that AIM sequence. So it's a big picture, the contrasting, and then the process. And then finally, we perform. So we implement a visualized action that we have. So maybe it would be, and this is not supposed to take long. This is like a 15, 30-second visualization, all parts of it. So maybe we're a golfer and we use this framework when we miss a short putt. So the cue is, hey, I missed a putt inside of 5 feet. That cues me to do my imagery visualization. Maybe that's winning the tournament, comparing that to where I am now. And then my process is visualizing the perfect putting stroke. And then you actually execute that perfect putting stroke. So it's ingrained in your body for when you hit the next putt. The 3 frameworks that I shared here, so the PETTLEP, Action, Observation, Motor Imagery, as well as FIT, which encompasses the AIM framework as well as the LAP. So LAP, it stands for Locate, Activate, Perform. To me, those are the most effective tools that are out there for you to start creating really useful visualizations. So the PETTLEP is general purpose. You can visualize anything using this framework, whether it's motivation or whether it's a skill acquisition. For action, observation, motor imagery, it's a little bit more catered towards skill acquisition. You could watch someone like making a bunch of basketball shots and feeling in their body, but I found the most success with this in like a process orientation and a skill building orientation rather than that motivational or like confidence building orientation. And then functional image training and the applied imagery motivation, this is a little bit more on the motivational side. So when you're having this cue, it's prompting this visualization and this thought that's meant to change your state. So it can motivate you, it can build confidence in you, it can help you manage under pressure, especially if the cues are a little bit more negative for you. Now, let's dive in to overcoming some of the common visualization barriers. Obviously, these tools are really useful, but people still struggle with this. It is a habit, it is a practice. You're very likely not going to get it right out of the gate, and that's okay. There's a lot of techniques and tools that you can use to improve the quality of the visualizations that you have that are outside of just practice. So one of the first tools you can use is to ask yourself questions. So I saw this in a Jason Day interview. So he went through a period in his career where he was having trouble visualizing the shot shapes. And Jason Day is known for like standing on the tee with his eyes closed and visualizing the shape that he wants the ball to hit. And what really helped him was that he would just ask himself a simple question. So he would say, what would the shot look like in the air if I hit it perfectly? This mechanism of just eliciting things through questions, it helps to just focus our attention on a singular thing rather than having this information overload of just like, oh, I have to visualize this thing in this crazy space. There's plenty of other questions that you can ask yourself, whether it's, hey, how fast would the ball be moving? What color is the golf ball? How heavy does the club feel in your hands? Just eliciting questions to yourself help you to deepen and understand the visualization. In the appendix of the book that I wrote, there's a full list of additional questions around any of the senses that you can possibly think of that can serve to help you visualize more effectively. Another thing you can do is to recruit more senses. So cycling through the different senses you have, especially when the visual imagery dims. So at least for me, I can always feel what the club would feel like in my hands and the weight of it and the rotation of my body in the golf swing. I still struggle seeing the ball or seeing what my eyes do during the golf swing. It's more of a body sensation for me, and I just rely really heavily on that. I also feel like the grass under my feet. I can feel a breeze. I can often smell like what the golf course smells like. And those make the visualization dramatically more sensory rich for me. So just recruiting more senses. Maybe it's something you hear. Maybe it's like a murmur of audience noise. Maybe, again, it's your sense of touch, like what the ball feels like in your hand or what the water feels like as you swim through it. Those are all very compelling things. Another technique to increase the efficacy or the vividness of your visualizations is to tie things to past experiences. So we would call this a memory bridging thing. So connecting a current visualization to a past experience. So let's say you hit a game winner in high school. You can visualize yourself doing the exact same thing, but maybe wearing a new jersey maybe in a current scenario that you really like. Something I thought was really cool is Wayne Rooney. He would always ask what kit they were wearing, so what uniforms they were wearing the next day and what the opponents were wearing. And he would visualize himself in that uniform, hitting all these incredible shots against his opponents who were wearing the uniform that he knew they would have on. It made it dramatically more real. You can also attach things to reality just like Wayne Rooney did there. I personally have a couple anchor memories that I go back to where I hit really good shots or I had these really good performances, and I can always build on those. The last little helper here is physical micro movements. So Steve Nash did that. It was a full movement that he was going through when he was visualizing the shot. We talked about Lindsey Vonn using her hands as replicas of the skis on the slope. But you can also do this. You see people, taking golf swings with a phantom club all the time. That is a real thing to do. There is science that backs that is an effective approach. So next time someone is making fun of you for swinging a fake golf club, you can tell them to screw off because you can cite the science or whatever it might be. Those are all of the high level things that I found to overcome common visualization barriers. There's again quite more in depth into each of these and more how-tos around those in the book. Those are all in the free version that you can get by just signing up for my newsletter. The link is in the description and in the show notes. If you want even more exercises, some very specific use cases and the details around those, you can find the full book on Amazon. But the core of all of the information is in the free first 6 chapters that I've included with the newsletter sign up. A big part of visualization is habitualization. So making this a habit. To me, that is the most important thing or valuable thing you can do to improve this skill. Just like anything in sports, the more you practice, the more it becomes natural. Visualization is very similar. So here's a couple ways to practice or build visualization into your routine that I found personally helpful. So the first one is just called minimum effective dose. Very similar if you're interested in habits to the atomic habit idea. Is just a small visualization every day is something that you could actually do. So you could start with 1 minute, 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes of focused visualization every day. Doing it right when you wake up or right when you go to bed is a really easy way to get into that habit. And doing just like quality practice there or quality visualizations there can really go a long way. And this is a great starting point for just continuing to improve your habit as well as learning in this field. Next, the visualization sandwich is what I call it. So it's a brief visualization before you do any physical practice. And then when you're resting, you can also do a visualization. So particularly when I'm training jiu-jitsu, as I'm getting ready, as I'm doing the warm-ups, I'm visualizing the movement patterns that I'm doing. And then in between rolls, which is like sparring, I'll take a minute and I'll visualize, hey, what didn't go as well as I wanted? How would I reconcile that? And what movement pattern would I do to improve the outcome there? Another one that I like, this is something Michael Phelps did. He would use these if-then plans to trigger visualizations or in his visualizations themselves. So Michael Phelps would actually visualize when things went wrong, and he would visualize how he would handle those types of things. Just like in the functional imagery retraining, you can either use visualization to simulate the if-thens, or you can just prompt a visualization when something happens. So an if-then that I really like is, if I brush my teeth, I do a visualization. If I walk through a doorway, I do a visualization. If I look at myself in the mirror, that's a cue to do a visualization. These are great ways to habitualize creating these positive visualization or mental imagery techniques into your life. And then the last thing is just simply tracking how often you're visualizing. Again, I will link the assessments of visualization quality in the description and in the show notes. Just doing that once a week, once a month shows you your progress and allows you to keep it in the front of your mind that you're doing that. Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on in this section is technology enhanced visualization. I'm a huge fan of technology. I'm a huge fan of innovation. And I think the whole point of this podcast is to talk about innovation in sports performance and what's on the cutting edge. What does the science say? So I would be not authentic if I wasn't telling you what's out there and what the frontier is. A lot of this stuff isn't necessarily accessible to everyone, but there are really good options for that. So it isn't necessarily traditional visualization where you're creating things in your mind, but the research and what I've seen about people using virtual reality around improving their performance has been really impressive. So Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for the the Commanders, he has been very famously using a virtual reality to improve his football performance. He's been doing this at almost 2x speed and being able to read the options. This is very similar to the visualization we would do in our brain. You're playing scenarios. In this case, he's playing them at a faster speed. Doesn't quite work out quite as well when we visualize at faster speed in our brains. But this visualization and the virtual reality, they create similar processes in the brain, right? You're just fooling your brain into thinking that it's happening in real life. And you're getting this really vivid sense of what's going on. So to me, the promise of virtual reality is really high. I'm super excited about what could happen in that future. VR also helps you to do traditional visualization better. If you're seeing this in real time, you can get a real game time scenario that you can practice visualizing in after, where there's no danger. And there's also less physical exertion. So you might be in a better state to visualize in that way. Another thing that I really liked and that I really would recommend for anyone listening to this or reading the book is AI assisted or guided visualization. You can make a script using AI specifically for your use case, and then you can have some AI read it to you. It's a really simple tool that for the most part is free. And in the book, I've provided a couple AI scripts that you can use to have any of the AI models that are out there generate a personalized script for you to either read. I really recommend just reading it out loud to yourself. There's pretty good research that says either a video prompted or audio prompted guided imagery session is better than a guided imagery session where you're reading from something. So what I would do is I would use one of the prompts in the book, basically fill in the parts that make it specific to you, and then read it to yourself and then listen to that in the morning to guide your own visualization session. To me, there's so much opportunity related to that. There's such cool stuff associated with the innovations there. It would be silly for us to not use it. And to me, that's a pretty low bar. It's not that hard to copy and paste that into some of the models. So to close episode 2, we talked about how to improve your visualization ability overall. Again, I think this is a really important skill. I use visualization not just for sports, but I also use it for any talks that I'm giving. I visualize what I'm going to say before I do a podcast like this. And it's an incredible tool to make our life even richer. Visualizing what happened in the past in incredible detail, you can go back and you can revisit some of the best moments of your life. We also touched on the frameworks that we can use. So PETTLEP, which is that more general purpose framework, action, observation, motor imagery. So watching a pattern and then visualizing as it's happening. And then functional imagery training, AIM and LAP, which are a little bit more focused on the motivational imagery, creating great states based on a cue when something happens, and then a micro visualization to improve your state. And then finally, that action step of the visualization. What are you visualizing that's going to happen next? And then acting on it. We also touched on some of the common misconceptions or like the common challenges you face with visualization and how you can improve upon them. And then finally, how we can build in that visualization practice as well. In episode 3, we're really going to focus on some of the specific applications, particularly injury, coming back from an injury, which I think is a great use case, getting through pressure situations, the yips, and things along those lines. Again, I highly recommend checking out the newsletter. When you sign up for that, you get the first 6 chapters of my visualization book completely free. They are more in depth, more details around this information. If there's anything that wasn't clear in this episode, I guarantee you that it is clear in the book. I had some incredible people review it. Some of my past guests, some other people who specialize in the field. And I'm super happy that I can just share that and the power of visualization with you all. Until next time, thank you so much for tuning in to the Exponential Athlete podcast. And let's continue pursuing excellence together.